The mantra in my office was, treat every patient like it's your mother. So when you say, what's the secret sauce, we go back to the same thing. Give them value, give them what they asked for, and more. I never yelled at anybody. How can you yell at anybody? What gives you the right to yell at anybody? And if you have to yell at anybody, they shouldn't be working with you. And I said with, not for, because everyone worked with me. But just going and being the figurehead of a company and going out and riding with your people is the most beneficial thing you can ever do, and the experience is invaluable. So I want people to know not everyone starts with a business plan. Sometimes it's just getting out there and doing it and watching it evolve.
David Kessler, former CEO of Sterling Medical Services. 3 exits, and now you help people go and grow their businesses inside of medical device sales, outside of it. You started with nothing. You're in a way different spot today, and now we're going to learn from you. And I want to just start this podcast off by, what's the biggest lesson that you learned from what I just mentioned?
That you can do it if you really want to. Nothing is impossible. You just have to get up every day and run after it and stay focused. And don't let the drama and the chatter detract you. Just keep moving.
And that's going to be a big point of today, because what you built was something out of your garage in the medical device sales space. And in only 12 years, you built it to where you had over 300 employees, and you got purchased 3 times. And some of the big players such as Coloplast and McKesson, to now be able to share with all of us what it was like, the challenges and the good times and maybe not so good times. But my whole goal today is the listeners that are going to listen to this, whether they're 23 years old or they're 70 years old, they get encouragement. They're going to see the energy you have and wonder what you're on. And they're going to say, how do I be more like David? And so, David, can you kind of give us a little background, where you grew up, what your home life was like, what that looked like when you went to college, all of that good stuff?
So I'm a Philly boy, and you're in Philly now. And there's a culture to Philly, which I've lived all my life. Came from a family of a father who came from nothing, had no father. He died when he was a year old. He was a taxi cab driver. He was a door-to-door salesman. And I knew as a kid that he struggled. But we were a family unit. My mother was great. She didn't need anything, and she just backed my father. And I watched him work 24/7 to make sure that he could take care of his family. When I was old enough to go to college and I couldn't go away because we didn't have the money, I went to Temple University, which is here locally, and I became an accountant, or an accounting degree, because my mother said, you're not going to become your father. You need to become a doctor, or you need to become an accountant, something where you can open up the newspaper, which is a pretty funny line at this point, look for a job and, at least have a stable income. So I became an accountant, worked locally for about 6 months with an accounting firm, and thought to myself, what in the world am I doing? And I just didn't enjoy it. And so I went out and I decided I was going into the workforce, and my father was just starting a business, and he said, come work with me. Oh, one of the biggest mistakes of my life. But no, it really wasn't. It was great. He built the first national consumer leasing business in the United States. It was innovative. It was definitely different. And he grew it very quickly. But I learned that I couldn't work with my father. But I also learned, without really reading any of the books that are now written, that he led by intimidation. And damn, he intimidated me. Is damn okay?
That's fine.
Okay. And I just wasn't happy. And I realized that I couldn't grow. And it was just a situation of family. And I realized I'd rather have a father and a mother and a family than have a partner or a boss that was my father who made me miserable, and I wanted to run away. So I left him. He was not happy about that because he thought he could have control of everything, like most people who are successful entrepreneurs, like a lot of control. And I went off and I took a job from that newspaper to become a consumer or a commercial real estate developer and leasing agent for the developer. And I worked for a small group of developers here in Philadelphia with some mostly office buildings, commercial space, as well as the largest condominium development at that time called Independence Place, right down by Independence Hall. And I learned the business because I was hungry and I was making $30,000 a year plus commissions. And I never worked on commission before, but wow, did I love it. The harder I worked, the more money I made. And I thought, this is really simple. And I just knew I enjoyed making money. And so I worked with them a while. They made me a partner. And then I learned about being a partner with people who really weren't on the same page as I was. I later found out that the main partner who had control of the company was siphoning money out of the business. And being an owner and a personal guarantor of loans, I had to pay back quite a bit of money to the banks on somebody that just stole it from me. I didn't let it sway me and stop. People looked at me and said, why aren't you angry and why aren't you doing it and going against him? And I just knew that it was all negative and it wasn't the answer. He was wonderful at just continuing lawsuits, and that was his game. And I learned it, I don't know how, but just said, that's not the game I want to be in. And I went and I took a job in the medical supply business, medical equipment business. I worked for a small local DME company, canes, commodes, walkers, hospital beds, oxygen, putting them out to nursing homes. And he brought me in to see if I could develop the disposable supply end of the business in nursing homes. Wow. So I was 30 years old then, maybe 32, and maybe 34, in fact, at that point. And I finally learned that the elderly became incontinent. Holy cow, what's that about? And I really began to understand that healthcare was such an integral part of your life and that you really needed the support of other people. Loved it, was growing the business, brought on salespeople to help us, and began to build that business based on just being a credible supplier. Until I found out that what was going on in the company they weren't doing things the right way. And I had to make a decision whether I wanted to see my children grow up in life or I wanted to make a lot of money working in a business that I really didn't think was ethical. So I exited. And when I exited, I told my boss that he's going to go down because there's an issue with the company. Of course, he denied it, told me everything was fine, and 6 months later, he was shut down. The person who went and gave state's evidence was wearing a wire, and I kind of learned once again. So I learned by the school of hard knocks, not by getting an accounting degree. Well, I would have said something even worse. By just not being, people took advantage of me. Mm-hmm. All I wanted to do was to grow, make them successful. If they were successful and I created more sales, it made me more successful. What a great win-win situation. Yep. And I just couldn't understand why people were trying to take things. As I'm sure in your field, many salespeople look at it and they go and they grow the company's region. The next thing they know, they're reducing the region and decreasing the commissions. And you say, well, what is going on here? So I decided to build a business on my own and said, how do you do it without hurting other people? See, I'm being very good, aren't I?
You're doing great.
And I opened up a company called Sterling Medical Services. How did I do it? Let me first of all lay out where I was at that point. 2 little kids, a wife, and a home that I asked my partner who was stealing the money in the real estate business if I could afford it. He said, oh yeah, I'll take this business and really grow it. And I ended up with a house that was now way too expensive for me, going into foreclosure, an ego car that I bought that my wife said, you really don't need that, but if you want it, do it. You're making the money. Well, I wasn't making the money, and I had this great car that was in the midst of being repossessed. So I wasn't in a good place, but I didn't take a second to think about it because it wasn't about that I wasn't in a good place. It was how the hell in the world do I get out of this situation? And I wasn't thoughtful about it. I just knew I had to get up in the morning and figure it out. I was lucky because I gained the respect of some of the major manufacturers in the medical disposable field, J&J, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Abbott, Coloplast, Convatec, which is the Bristol-Myers Squibb division. And they came to me and they said, what are you doing? We really enjoyed working with you. You were growing this business. And I said to them, I had no money. And I can't start my own business. And they agreed to give me product at no cost on consignment. And what I was going to say is risk themselves on me, take the risk. And one day, truckloads of material started being delivered to my garage. My wife was calling me up saying, what do I do? These tractor trailers are dropping off products. I said, put them in the minivan and drive them up to the driveway and get them in the house. I went out and sold. I started to see that there was a difference in the market. Where I was at this point was about 1994. I was about 37, 38 years old. Home care was becoming a new emerging market. Hospitals were limiting the number of days that patients were staying. They implemented the DRGs, which meant that if you came in with a certain type of diagnosis, you were there for a couple of days and they got you out. And the saying of they let them out quicker and sicker was what was the climate of the environment of the industry. And now there were patients at home, going home sicker than ever, without benefits for home care supplies. An opportunity. And I started running after it. And I was successful in building this little business out of my garage by just becoming a quality, good supplier. I sold on knowledge and education. So I had a group of, I was in the medical supply end of wound care, ostomy, urological, and diabetic supplies. Mm-hmm. So all consumable, most of them chronic care products. And I realized that product A was the same as product B that could be the same as product C. So I had to go and figure out how am I going to differentiate myself in this market. And so I started to lean on education, just like your reps do. What do? They go into the hospitals or into physician offices, and they're giving the doctor much needed and nurses much needed information that they don't get ordinarily. So I felt like I was providing, especially in the wound care end of the business where there's hundreds of products and nobody knows which product to use on which patient. Well, if I came in and became a clinical piece as well as a supply piece, I was providing greater value. And I started to build a business on what I would call value-added programs and services, providing better care for patients. And so it allowed me to build a business, make money, but also give back.
Yeah.
What a great formula. And that's how I began.
What I know a lot of people are going to be able to resonate is a lot with your story. And so I want to unpack that as we go, because this is all going to come into breaking into medical device sales or being successful in medical device sales and also in business and in life. And what many people, I think, miss is being successful and whatever you define success as. There's a lot of clues that get shown, but many people just focus on the business or the revenue or the money side. And I think one thing that you've continuously showed throughout your story was being ethical, being a good person, believing in yourself. And there's some things I want to just unpack there. So one thing I want to start out as is you went and got your degree in accounting, and you only did that for about 6 months. Why, after only 6 months, did you leave?
Because I became an accountant because my mother told me to.
Yeah.
And why? Because I was bored.
Yep.
I now love numbers and I love my financials because they allow me to drive a business. But instead, I was behind the business, giving back just numbers to people and not using that to do something bigger and to feel more valuable and to give back.
Yeah. Let's actually just talk about this real quick. Your dad went from being a taxi driver to starting a business, and then you just showed me a picture right before off air where it's, hey, don't marry your car, engage your car, right? And now it's into the leasing world, which was why it's so successful. And he was right at the beginning. But for you, because we have people who watch this and they've worked in family businesses and they don't know, and sometimes they want to look at medical device sales. But for you, what were the main reasons when you were part of a successful business that was even a part of your family that made you start thinking, maybe I should go off and do something else on my own?
I was miserable. I was the kid.
Yep.
And I was never respected, and I knew that I would never be me and feel fulfilled and do what I wanted to do. I don't think I ever would have made the change and left if it wasn't for my wife. So one day I came home, and of course I was complaining about my day and how miserable I was, and my wife turned around and said, well, why don't you leave? Well, we all know working for family, you make a little bit more money than normally, and there's a comfort zone there. And for some reason, I just had the ability to walk in one day and say, I'm leaving. Best move of my life, not as thought out as I would think that you would do it as. A lot of the changes I've made in my life were just because it was inertia. Life moved that way, and I went that way. I didn't think it out. I just implemented.
Yeah. And like you and I have talked about, I think sometimes just the action will get you in a lot of places that you've never seen yourself in life or would have thought you would be in life by just taking the action, because most people will live in that fear forever. Now, one thing I do just want to ask is, when you did leave, what was the relationship like with your family after that?
Fine. They were still grandparents to my children. They were still my parents, and there was no resentment. He really was able to handle it. He went and sold his business and left, and he kind of threatened me and said, listen, if you don't stay here, I'm selling the business. And I thought, he'll never leave the business, so do it. And I need to go do what I do. So yes, the family, I was lucky.
Yep.
I mean, and I'm a very strong believer in a solid family unit, and you have got to move with your family. I mean, it's your family.
Yeah.
You know, you don't give up on your kids. You don't give up on your parents. There's always drama in some sort, but it's your drama.
Yeah. So where I'm really excited to dig in is you worked at a DME company for only about a year. And then instead of saying, I'm going to go work at another company, I'm going to go be a rep somewhere, you decided, I'm just going to go start my own company. Talk me through why you feel after a year of working for someone else that you could be like, I can just start my own company.
I didn't think I could start my own company. I think I was being pressured because my father said, and I have to make this politically correct, when you're tired of getting messed up with other people, that's a nice way, maybe you should start thinking about taking control of your life and opening up your own business. And I was being pushed that way just by hearing him constantly saying, it's never going to be any different. And again, he came from a small entrepreneurial world, never worked for large corporations. I never worked for large corporations, so I had none of that experience. I didn't even know what I was missing. And so I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to go. And then the manufacturer said, we're going to help you. And I thought, how am I going to build a business? I'm going to treat people the way I wanted to be treated. It's not that difficult. And build a team and be able to start to give back. Wake up every day feeling great that you're giving back something. And for that, you're earning your keep.
And with that, you left multiple times after helping him build things. What gave you the confidence every single time to be able to leave, to maybe go start the new thing or go get another job or eventually start your own business?
I was forced out each time, if you think about it. I mean, after the accounting and working with my father, which I was kind of forced out in my own, way. Then I worked for just the real estate company. Well, there was no business. I came back from vacation one day, and the bank who had set up the funding and realized the general contractors weren't being paid came in and took over the building. So had no opportunity there. And then when I went into the DME business with the other gentleman, I couldn't stay.
Yeah.
So I was really, so life's inertia drives you
Yep.
to where it needs to go. Stop thinking so much. Just let it roll, but then work the hardest in what you're doing.
I think a lot of times we fight what life's trying to give us, and then we can sometimes stay in that negative space or, oh, this happened to me, instead of you just found the next solution. And that's what's really going to be a part of your story here when we talk about you building this company to over 300 employees in only 12 years, is maybe it's never the right time, or it doesn't feel like the right time, but what are you going to do every single day to make something happen? And first of all, when I ask you this, when you made Sterling Medical Services, did you ever think that you would have 300 plus employees and do 3 exits?
Never. I wasn't even educated enough to understand how you make an exit. Everything as I grew was because it evolved. And you then realize that you need to take these next steps, and then you begin to investigate it. Not as sophisticated as many people that you've, I'm sure, interviewed or work with, but that was just the way my life evolved, and it worked for me.
I love when you go into that, because I think a lot of times when I'm talking to especially young people, first off, they think if they're going to do medical device sales or whatever job it is, it's the rest of their life. We always have to have the conversation. It's usually not going to be the rest of your life, number one. But number two is we make all these plans, but a lot of times you can't even think about the plans if you just built something great, right? And for you, that's why I asked you that question, is you can't even think about exiting 3 times or 300 employees when you first started, because let's talk about the early days. The early days, I want you to walk me through what it kind of looked like when you say you're getting a house that's starting to get foreclosed on. You have 2 kids at home. At this time, you're about 37, 38 years old. And you had these companies reach out to you and say, hey, there's an opportunity. You don't have to pay us right up front, and you can actually go start selling. Walk me through that journey.
Hope you're enjoying the episode. I want to take a moment to just give you a little more information about new to medical device sales in our program, on how we've helped over 2,500 people break in at an average of $113,000 in medical device sales. Inside of our program, you'll not only learn how to break into medical device sales, but also what these companies are looking for, what you should be doing to have yourself stand out, move on in the interview process, and also how to get the offer. We also work with medical device companies to help them find top tier talent. We make sure to do all of the hard work for them to give them amazing candidates just like yourselves. If you're really interested about learning more about medical device sales and how to break into the industry, click the link down below.
You call it a journey. I called it a necessity. I didn't realize what I was doing, but I knew I had to go out and do it. And so the journey began by just waking up each day, not giving it any thought, going out and meeting with people and selling yourself. I mean, what I love about the medical field is how do you bring back something to people that they need? And I think I've said it before, and make money doing so. So it was a great model to go. Never thought about that in 6 months I'm going to have to move out and get a warehouse. And I didn't know what a loading dock was. So, I mean, this is how naive I was. But as the business evolved organically, I evolved because there was no other solution. So I went out and I found a small office space, and then I hired an administrative assistant, and then I hired a warehouse manager who I told to put on the air conditioner. Who knew that warehouses don't have air conditioning? Or at least in those days they didn't. I mean, the stories are just great. But there was no solution that included the word failure. You needed to grow. And I finally brought on my first salesman, who was a guy with no healthcare experience at all. He was my neighbor. He lost his job. He's in the lumber business. And Jerry said to me, I'm going to figure this out. Give me a shot. Let's see if we can do it. And he came in, and I said to him, here's the deal, and I will never change it, which was something that I was very sensitive to because my deals kept changing.
Yep.
Jerry remained with me not only through the 12 years, but many years after, and then went to work for a very close friend of mine for many years after that, and just retired and is upset. He just asked me if there was any work that I knew of, and he just turned 80. So, but these are the type of people that you want to involve yourself with. I also began to see, like I think mentioned earlier, that a gauze pad, anybody can supply. And the first thing that somebody's going to do is they're going to erode my cost of that price of that gauze. So I had to change that type of a sale. And I decided that I needed to bring in clinical expertise. How many disposable supply companies do you think had a wound care management program or a network of WOC nurses, which are wound ostomy and continence nurses? In my days, they were called interstomal therapy nurses. And I provided these nurses to educate because I thought the educated consumer is my consumer. We'll educate them, we'll supply the supplies, and guess what? We're going to get the outcomes. And the other thing was, my customers had to do nothing, because you have to realize that it's my problem to get the products to them, to get the services to them, not theirs. And as you do that, you begin to build credibility. There's no secret here. It's not that hard. Just do what you need to do, and you'll see that people become your partners. And that's how I started.
And you had somebody who had no sales experience start with you and then stay with you throughout the whole time. Talk to me about that, with the aspect of they didn't have your traditional sales experience, the typical sales experience. Tell me what you felt made them such a good salesperson and why you were willing to take a shot on them.
I took a shot at him because I liked him and he was my neighbor and I felt bad. I mean, this is not your big business where there's an educated guy that was like, oh, we're going to do you because here's your features and your benefits, and therefore I think this fits in with what we're doing. We were two guys trying to now both pay the mortgage, and so he came along. But we listened, we absorbed, and we gave it back. Mm-hmm. And really it was that simple. But not only that, you have to realize that, so what are you doing? You're going out and you're finding customers. From the customers, you're also trying to figure out, look, healthcare is a tough business, and especially I was a distributor. So I needed to have a contract with somebody who's going to pay for it. I needed to have a relationship with a doctor that wanted to order it, and I had a patient that needed to use it. So you had many different hands in this whole thing. And when I started the business, as I said, home care was emerging. Healthcare companies did not have benefits for home care. Well, I have to control my destiny. So if I'm going to put out the products, who's going to pay for it? And I began to then evolve and start to build another part of my business of going out and contracting with insurance companies. But I first had to educate them and explain there was a need. Well, we don't think there's a need. Well, the products for disposables are $5, $10. But the person that can't pay for a loaf of bread is going to buy the bread, not the wound care or the ostomy supply, and you're going to find them back in the hospital. And they all looked at me and they thought, that could be. 2 years later, and a lot of meetings and a lot of focus, we finally got the first insurance company to open up the market to paying and reimbursing for patients who had wound, ostomy, urological, and diabetic needs at home. And that really opened up an entire new market in healthcare, because DME companies were doing it, but disposables were a byproduct. They wanted to put out the oxygen, the bed, those types of products that are chronic and continue. Who wants to put out 15 pieces of gauze? My average box of supplies that went to a patient was $100. 12 years into this business, I did $68 million in the last year when I was with the business of $100 sales. That's building a business.
And what I really want to point out there is the two hungry individuals who needed to pay rent for the mortgage and just was willing to hustle, willing to listen, and willing to stay consistent with hearing the customer's need or providing the need that they saw inside of the industry, and then just never stopping.
Never stop.
And that's one thing that I really want to emphasize today is many times we talk to sales reps that could be in their first year or they're in their 7th year. But what people don't understand is if you just continuously chase what you're going after, provide value, listen to them, see how you can be of service of them, And I think one thing that I really want all the listeners to hear is when you were talking about, that's not your problem, that's now my problem. To when you're talking to the nurses and how we're getting the supplies. And I want to just put this out there because for everyone listening, how do you make someone want to use you who might never use you or hasn't used you? You make their life as easy as possible. And with you, you just kept finding the gap and then being able to share with it. But also, I just want everyone to hear 2 years it took to get that first big contract. 2 years.
That's right.
So many meetings leading up to that. And I bet there were so many times that the meetings went high and you guys were on your cloud nine, and the next meeting, it was like, this is over. It's not going to happen.
You thought you were going to close, and all of a sudden, well, we never really looked at the emergency room status or the statistics. And therefore, how do we really know they're coming back in? And okay, fine. And you have to pull back. And then you have to re-engage. And failure was not an answer. And I knew it had to be done. The market was going to happen one way or another. Because how do you let these people, you just had to get the right set of ears and eyes and timing. And that's, you just keep punching.
And one thing I want to emphasize that I didn't even touch before this was you talked about the patient who keeps coming back in, but they have to decide on the gauze or the loaf of bread. And you kept pushing so hard because you knew this was going to be beneficial to the end user. And I think that's one thing that's why I love medical device sales is the things that we sell actually get to change people's lives.
That's right.
In a positive manner. And because of that, you didn't think about the money. You didn't think about, oh, this is what it's going to get me. You just kept saying, this is what they need. And I'm just going to make sure that I keep showing the value of what we do so that person isn't deciding between bread and gauze.
Right.
And I think there's so many ways we can take that. But to anybody that's wanting to get into medical device sales or any kind of sales, it's being passionate about whatever you're working for, whatever you're selling, knowing what it does, and then continuously knowing that it's not a straight line. It's not going to be usually one meeting and going, especially, let's just be clear, if it's over 50,000, 20,000, whatever it is, it's not usually a, hey, how you doing? Sign it. There we go. It's the highs of the highs where you're jumping one meeting to now they're not going to do it. And you just continue to just stay with it. After trying for 2 years to get those contracts, you finally get it. And then 10 years later, you do $68 million in sales off of $100 orders. I want everybody to know that it all starts somewhere. And I want to take us one step back because you talk about the hungry salespeople, and we're going to talk about some of your sales tactics because you're a great salesman. But one of the stories you've told me off air that I really want people to hear is a lot of times people will hear this and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's hard and it's all this stuff. But I want you to share the story that you shared with me a little bit off air about before you started the business, when you had 2 kids and your house was getting foreclosed on. Tell me about that story of your car.
Well, I will tell you also, which I think really is an important piece, is I couldn't go to my father and ask for the money because I knew if I went to him and asked for the money, I would have been controlled by him again. So that wasn't an answer. So for people that say, oh, the father had money and he gave him the money and there's another little rich boy that was able to build a business. No, I had no money. And I didn't. Like you said, the house was being foreclosed on. I just was dragging my feet there. And my car was ready to be repossessed. I had a nice big Mercedes 450 SEL. As I said, my wife said, I don't know why you need an old man's car. And it was black, but I thought it looked great. And I couldn't afford it anymore. I took it. There was a mall here locally in Philadelphia that was notorious for having cars stolen. And so I decided to take my wife to the mall that night. And on a Friday night, we left the car with the keys for over 2 hours. And I came back and the damn car was still there. So the real world problem, the real life problems, it's the problems that we all have. They may come out in a different form, but I never said poor me. And I work with a lot of young people, as you know, right now, and you hear some of that. It's not poor you, it's just life. And everyone has one of those. I mean, I always talk about the whack-a-moles. I don't know if you know whack-a-moles at the amusement park, where you knock them down with that sledgehammer, and damn it, if in 2 seconds later another one pops up. That's life.
Yep.
Go for it. It's me or you. It's going to be me. And I think I got stronger because it was survival. And I never allowed myself to say poor me, because it wasn't poor me. Everybody's in that same situation, just differently. Stop looking outside and go be accountable and go do what you needed to do. So yes, the car wasn't repossessed. The house wasn't foreclosed on officially. I did write a huge check to the banks, and I moved forward. And I never thought about it again. My father came to me and said, people took advantage of you. Why aren't you going after them legally? And I said, Dad, it's all negative. I need to get up in the morning and make money, not worry about that guy, because one day what goes around comes around. And if it doesn't, oh well, because I'll end up being happier. And I never thought about it. And that's how I then began. And I just rolled up my sleeves, went out and sold during the day, came back, opened up those cases in the garage, took the 10 gauze out, the 20 catheter bags, and whatever else I needed, stuck it in the bag, put it in my wife's car. And when she took my son to preschool, she dropped the packages off to UPS, and that began Sterling. I built a brochure by putting a tablecloth on my table, putting the products on the tablecloth, and becoming my own photographer and taking the pictures, but making the brochure look professional. It's all about how you put out what you want to and how you want to be perceived, and then just do what you say.
And so you always stay positive, and you made it through. And you said packing up your supplies, your wife's dropping it off, but it was the sales that were making it for you to be able to pay for everything now. And then now you have a business, and we always talk about that's what we do. We work with salespeople. But for you, I want to talk to David, the person who's always selling, who's always been selling, who many people I talk to talk about how amazing of a salesperson you are. And it comes off to be the truth because you've sold the company 3 times. But talk to me about what makes a great sales rep.
Believing in your product. I like a consultative sale. I like giving back. And the medical device business allows you to do all of that. I mean, think about it. I mean, why I love working with you and what you do is you give people the opportunity to create value, not only in making more money, but in who they are, because you're giving back. Those pieces of equipment that you're giving, or implants or whatever it is so valuable, and you're going in there saying, hey, doc, hey, nurse, this is what we can give you in order to enhance your capabilities and enhance patients' life. How much better? Is that really sales? No. It's just being a good human being and giving back and doing your part. So sales was easy for me. You know, I mean, I go back to do unto others, you like others to do unto you. It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
And do you feel most sales organizations or people being in sales do overcomplicate it?
I think that you have to look at the individual. You can overcomplicate it, but the ones that are successful don't overcomplicate it. I mean, that's really, you have to look in the mirror and say, what am I doing here and why? It shouldn't be. I mean, and the products that you're out there helping people sell in the marketplace are all beneficial for somebody for the right reason. So why overcomplicate it? You just have to bring your message to the right people and then believe in what you're doing and have the product work.
And you believe everybody is a customer or a client or a potential client?
Well, not everybody. You have to have the right medical condition, but yes.
Yeah. No, I just asked that because what we talk about when we've worked with so many sales individuals is sometimes there's not a right fit. And what we watch is a lot of salespeople continue to push and push and push. And we always talk about a lot of times it's easier to take a maybe into a yes instead of changing that no into a maybe. And then even if you got the no to a maybe, which takes way more time and way more energy, all it takes is one little screw up for them to go right back to the no. And I just want to get your opinion, because you grew a market, you created a market, you're going to get the no's. So we understand that it just took way more time. But for you, not everyone was going to buy your business. And so for you, were you able, whether it's you're creating the market, whether you're going to sell the company, how did you start seeing who's the actual potential people I could go after, I could actually prospect, I could go hunt?
Well, I think there's two questions there. One is on selling my business or partnering with people in order to grow my business. And the other one is going out to just regular customers.
Yeah.
And so let's go out to the regular customers. You've got to put yourself in your customer's place. Find out what their issues are. And I always said I had to create the need and then fulfill the need. Because a lot of times the person across from you doesn't really know they have the need. The doc that's been doing the same type of procedure for years and is happy with it doesn't understand that there could be something else that's out there. So how do you get that message to them? That's the roadblock to getting to where you want to get to. And why you got to put yourself in their place and try to then just continue to move your initiative. So I believe that that's really, how you overcome the obstacles of people saying maybe or no. Maybe just means another opportunity to get in front of them. But how do you do it? And why is it that this is a value to them? So I think that that's the way I would continue to go after it. And I wouldn't say relentless, but I was passionate. And all of a sudden what you want to do is you want to provide a service that takes no energy on your customer's part. It just is easy. It's there when they need it. It performs the way it should. And when it doesn't, become accountable, quick, and make sure you take care of the issue. That's all anybody wants. Life's not that difficult. Go do it. So that's the answer on that end. Talking about how I grew my business and how I knew about the right customer for my business was you have to know who you want to be a partner with. As I said earlier when I wrote that big check and I said I'll never have a partner again, I was a pretty tough cookie when it came to the operating agreement when I went to sell my business. But there's private equity and there's venture capital, and then I also looked at a third category called strategic partners. People in the industry that had a need that I may be able to help with, but they could also help my need. Mm-hmm. And at the point when I went out was about 4.5 years into business. I was doing about $4.6 million in revenue. Problem is insurance companies pay 90 days, and I was growing at 40% a year. So as I was growing, I needed more inventory, very different than many other businesses, especially like technology and things like that. So I needed actual product. So I'm buying product on today's sales and being paid on products that were sold 3 months ago. So I couldn't catch up. And so I needed money. And I went out and I did it. And then you have to learn a little bit about yourself. So was I the typical entrepreneur that was going to roll the dice and put hundreds of thousands? I had mortgaged everything I could mortgage to now grow this business. And I knew that my comfort zone wasn't to go and commit more. I needed to figure out another way. I didn't want private equity. I didn't want venture capitalists. Why? Because I knew they had an exit strategy. And 5 years and 1 day from today, they're going to say, where's my ROI? That's not a partner for me. That was only going to create agita, aggravation. We weren't on the same page. So I went out looking for a strategic partner, and I ended up finding many. I was given many offers. J&J made an offer, KCI, the bed company. They also had the wound vac. So we were working together. So they knew who I was. I knew a lot about who they were. And ultimately, Coloplast came. And their need was that they were market share leader of their products all over the world except the United States. So they were looking for a company that was going to help them drive their products in the marketplace. And for some reason, they thought a $4.6 million home care company was going to do it. But they were great people, and they were believers. And we worked out a deal where they purchased 50% of my business, but gave me the autonomy to grow that business. Obviously, there were some guidelines. They're not crazy. They're a public company, second largest in Denmark, and just good, solid people. And they taught me so much more. I never worked for a big company, as you heard. I didn't know what a budget was. I didn't know what fiscal responsibility was. I just knew at the end of the quarter, did I make money or not? And I asked my accountant. So, I mean, this was all new, and I thrived on it.
Yeah.
So that I was able to grow, and I wanted to grow. Yeah. I didn't realize it, but when I needed to do a budget, I figured it out. And when I had to defend my budget, I defended it. But I knew my business. I think that anyone that's listening to this podcast has to know they need to know their product. They need to know their business better than their customers, better than the clients, the patients. Yep. You need to be able to provide it. Why? Because you're providing a service. You're not just providing a product. This is all about service. And that's the way that we should be focused, in my opinion. Coloplast grew with me, and they ended up purchasing the business after 4 years of working together. I ended up taking over their U.S. operations in the U.S. operations, which was in Marietta, Georgia, helped them build their direct to all the markets in the U.S., and we began to then work with that as well as with Sterling. And it was a great ride in a lot of respect.
One thing that came to mind when you were talking is, how many meetings did it take from the moment you did your 4.6, you're like, hey, maybe I need a partner, to the time you actually sold it for the first time?
For the first time, about 18 months.
18 months. Yeah. How many meetings do you think it would take?
Oh, dozens. You're talking about, remember, you're not talking about an entrepreneur that goes, wow, I think this is great, or a private equity person that says, well, I'm going to invest in this because I got X% of the ownership. These were people that were in big corporations. Yep. And they had a lot of people they were answering to all over the world because they were making a bold move into the market, whether it was Coloplast or whether it was later with McKesson. And it is easier for people in the corporate world to make no decisions that are different than the norm because it preserves their position in their company. So once I realized that, or that's my opinion, I had to figure out how I was going to make this the easiest way possible for people. And that's, once again, putting yourself in the place of your customer. They were my customer at this point. And I understood what their need was. And so I began to feed on that and help them with that and show them. You know, we talk about leading people to the water, but you can't make them drink. I really try to make them drink too. But that's really, I had to find the right people. And you do learn that some people want to step on you. They like your model, but they don't really want you. You have to just get the dynamics of the people, their culture, and the way they do things. But integrating is tough. It really was.
What were the biggest challenges of going from you started the company and it's your company to now you're partnering with someone?
I guess having bosses that didn't really, they were the venture capital people and the P's going, oh, you have to increase your profitability of the company, and they're not a business person. They're just somebody that's telling you have to do it because, and I'm sure many of your viewers are sitting in the same situation. You can't throw a higher profit. I started out primarily in wound care. Wound care was a very high gross profit product line. Ostomy was what Coloplast was known for, and they wanted to drive their ostomy business. It was about 75% less gross profit in the ostomy business than it was in the wound care business. So all of a sudden I started to turn my business, but my profitability was going down, but their products were going out into the marketplace. So what do you want? Do you want your products out in the marketplace and you have to sacrifice some net income? Or do you want just a high volume, because this is just an investment where you're looking to turn dollars? And that's a very difficult conversation to have with people. And being the salesman, my bonus program was based on me making the budget. So I wasn't going to agree on an unrealistic budget. So having people that are just in the corporate world saying you need to change your budget numbers and increase your net income on a product that's way less profitable, just made no sense to me until I finally looked at my boss and I said, you know what, Jens? I said, I don't think I know how to do this. Why don't you do it and show me? Oh, no, David, that's for you to figure out. I finally met with the CEO of the company, and we talked like two business people, like two human beings, and understood what was going on and what our goals were. It's all about communication.
Yeah.
So that was probably the hardest in working with somebody else and understanding how you fit. I don't know why, but I just had the innate ability to fight for what I thought was right. And I knew that what I was saying made sense, and you had to have a good partner. And my partner should know exactly what we're talking about and understand it.
Yeah, and you were finally able to get there. But one thing I really enjoy is talking about the different profit margins. And this is something that I just want to educate viewers, because many of them don't know this. When we're talking about different things when we're talking about different divisions in medical device sales, right?
Right.
This is where we talk about you have different divisions, whether it's urology, orthopedics, whether you're doing capital, robotic sales, all the above. Nobody ever really talks to them about profit margins, and we're looking at revenue, EBITDA, all of this aspect of it. And so they're just like, this is my product, let's go sell it. But I think one thing I really just want to talk about real quick is here you could have been selling more product, but you would have made way less money because of the profit margins were so different. And this is one thing I just always want people to think about before they're getting into medical device sales, or even if they're in medical device sales currently. Reps and managers and companies are able to pay different salaries and incomes into people, normally based off what is the company generating, what's the profit margins that they're trying to run at, and what's the ease of it, right? Oh, $1 million robot's going to be a way different sale than a $100 package of disposables. And so I really just appreciate you talking about that. But what's the biggest thing that you've seen when you were in that business, right? You guys started in wound care and then you started expanding. What did you feel was the biggest difference in the high profit between the low profit areas? But for example, you had one that was low profit, but sounds like a high demand.
Right.
And one was high profit, and it still probably had high demand, but you were getting told to push two different things. So can you kind of just talk about that?
When you talk, like, I'm going to go to your salespeople, who are out there now trying to secure positions. If I was that person, I wouldn't care about the profitability of it. And I think that it's not in their equation. But when it came to someone like me, I just had to balance what my partner's goals were and what the community needed, what my customers needed. And I fought for the lower profits because they were getting back. You can't always look at dollars to be your return. You've got to look at the greater good. We were able to now expand their market. Mm-hmm. What value is that? Yep. I mean, look at the marketing dollars that people use and never get any ROI on them. Yep. We were getting ROI because people were starting to use it. And with OSME especially, it's a chronic care product. So month after month after month, their products were now going out. I incentivized the insurance companies. I started to build the company. Again, I wanted to give back value. I wanted to give back outcome. I wanted to see people heal, feel better. That is the intangible. That's not the monetary piece, but that grew my business more than everything. Mm-hmm. Being the reliable salesperson that got that product, that got that robotic to the place when it needed to be there on time is as valuable as the profit margin. You're not there just for the profit margin. You're there to provide a total program for these people, a solution.
Yeah.
So
these are the conversations that not many people have, and have reps and other individuals even looking into the industry to think about. It's more of just break into the industry, do what we say, figure it out, right? Compared to what I like to give a little approach from where you're at is you're an amazing salesman. You've sold companies, but you've also hired a lot of employees. And I think also if you can give them a little bit of education and knowledge before they get into a company and understanding kind of how the business works and what's the outcome of the business or what's the goals of the business, they can go with being more aligned in where they're wanting to get to in their career and also with the company.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I always felt was that the salesperson needed to not worry about any of that, because I didn't want those issues to become part of the sales equation, whether it was the pricing on it, whether it was who to run after. I wanted you to go sell. And if you can keep that message simple, it's like the KISS adage of keep it simple, stupid. I think so. I did that. When the salesperson, if I push that a little bit and try to go where you're going, I would say, well, I guess the salesperson has to be a little sensitive to understand this is not as profitable of a product, and therefore they don't have as much wiggle room in order to increase the commissions and things like that. That's just a fact of your business, and you just have to deal with it. But you may be able to move twice or three times as much as somebody else's products. So when I think of answering this for the salesperson, it's not their problem. It really isn't. The company has set this up, has set everything else up. They should be able to do it. Where I would be concerned as a salesperson is the price in the market. Is it a market price? Is it being reimbursed by insurance, or is it being reimbursed by the patient or by the hospital or by the doctor or whoever's buying it? That part. And is the product in line with its competition? Those are the things that I'd be looking at. If I have to sell, I'm not selling about the profitability of the company. I'm selling against somebody else or for somebody else. So.
And if we're talking directly to the salesperson.
Yes.
What's your advice to someone to be a better sales rep?
Watch the multitude of freaking videos that you have. You're amazing, okay? And if I would have had the knowledge and education that you provide to people to go out and be as armed as they are to go out and get a job, just absorb it all. And then most importantly, and I think I said it was, take care of people the way that you would like to be taken care of. Don't overextend yourself. If you say you're going to do something, do it. It's really not that complicated, but the tools that you have given people or give people is incredible. That's the only reason I'm sitting across from you right now, is I think that this opportunity that you give people is incredible because you're giving me the keys to the kingdom. Nobody walked me through it. Nobody said, hey, did you get an offer? What was the offer? Let me give you some feedback on how to do it. That's what I do now when I mentor young people. But you're doing this on a large-scale basis in a focused industry. There is nothing better than healthcare to be in. It's not going away. It's only getting bigger. There's always new opportunities. Don't plan. I mean, I don't know if I said it earlier, but there's a saying, you plan and God laughs. And it is so true. Just keep doing and being a good person. And it comes back in multiples. So just keep giving back and doing it. And stop being focused on the dollars.
And I think that's great advice because, again, that's what we're always talking to people about is just treat others better than they treat you, right? Actually, how can we make their life easier? And my favorite is when we're talking to people about it, especially like follow-ups, when people are trying to either break in the industry or they're following up with a doctor and they're like, I sent this follow-up, and I'm like, would you respond to that if some random stranger sent it to you? And they're like, no. I'm like, there's your answer, right? But having them put themselves in the customer's shoe, right, of how do they like to be sold to? And of course, you have to learn the different people. But I just really want people to understand there's never a one-size-fits-all, but there are pieces that if you learn and you get better at, you'll continue to progress. But now I want to take it from the salesperson.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
What you were saying is the mantra in my office was treat every patient like it's your mother. So we had hundreds of customer service people, and what our focus was is the day we got the order called into us was the day that order was going out the door, and it was going to be delivered the next day. So this was all on a time factor. And you're talking about processing a lot of $100 orders. And sometimes the orders didn't get out. And it would just blow my mind that nobody went and picked up the phone and called the patient and said, listen, your order got held up because of this, this, and this. It'll be out tomorrow. How simple is that? Treat them like you like to be treated. That's it. So when you say, what's the secret sauce? When we go back to the same thing. Give them value, give them what they asked for, and more. Right? And just be honest.
And to that, as a leader, did you just tell people to package those $100 packs? Or did you sometimes put on a suit, go to work all day, and still go help?
Yes, of course. How do you go home? But that came from my father.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have a booking room where he booked appointments. And I went to leave one night when I was working with him, and it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I was engaged, and I had to drive an hour to go find my fiance, and I was going to take her to dinner. And I walked in, and I said, listen, I'm leaving. He goes, well, are they all booked out? And I went, well, no, they just have a few more. He goes, then you don't leave. You go in there, and you either help book or buy him a pizza. It's late. And that never left me. So at 5 o'clock, when we closed our call center, with the suit and tie on, I went in the back room and I helped pick and pack the orders. And yes, but what did it do? It made me so knowledgeable on that sector of the business. It was amazing. And also the feeling of the employees seeing me in there screaming and yelling and laughing when I was saying screaming, just making it a fun thing, man. Hey, I can get this thing packed faster than you can. Let's get this done. Oh my God, here's what's going on. Everyone, okay, Dave, let's go, right? That's what you want. That's how you build team. That's how you build success. You don't go home.
I really appreciate that for the fact of I've been taught that throughout this journey as well, but you have to lead from the front. I think many times people think leading from the front is the pointing. But there's a great picture of what they think managers or bosses do, and it's point and yell. But what it is they're actually grabbing the front of the rope, pulling the big thing, and they start pulling with them. And that's something you share, and you lived, and you still live. But that's what I really appreciate, because there's a lot of people that come into whatever industry, and they think once they get to a certain point, I don't do that because that's not my job. And I think that's the one lesson, if anything from that story, is everything's your job, especially if you look at it as your business, which hopefully every rep and every person a part of every company looks at it their business, which we know not always will, but hopefully the reps that I've seen be the most successful, and the managers and the teams, is they look at it as their own business. And then what you just said is they're going to also go be with the people, not just tell them what they should do. And we had a former guest on here who was the vice president at Medtronic, and he would go fly out at the end of the quarter to make sure to go help them hit their quota. And I think that's one thing, if anything, I can just push out to anybody that's ever watching, is the leaders that I watch have the most success, that I get to interview, that I get to talk to, that I get to learn from. They're always in the trenches with the people, not just yelling at them.
I never yelled at anybody. How can you yell at anybody? What gives you the right to yell at anybody? Discuss it. These are business problems. And if you have to yell at anybody, they shouldn't be working with you. And I said with, not for, because everyone worked with me. The best thing in the world was going out and driving with the guys and being I remember Memphis, Tennessee, and, hey, I was in, Green Bay, and, and it's all the same. But just going and being the figurehead of a company and going out and riding with your people is the most beneficial thing you can ever do, and the experience is invaluable. So, and remember what I said. I said you have to really anticipate what the people's needs are, or give them what their needs are, and then and then fulfill their needs. I think that was huge. I remember one day sitting with a huge insurance company, and they'd say, "Listen, we have no way of managing these patients. We don't know if they're getting the right products. The quantities we believe these nurses are putting out too many products, and we're not getting the right utilization. And that's really our big need. Otherwise, we're fine, but can you give us a 20% reduction on the cost of the products?" And I said, "No, but I can solve your other problems. We have a wound management program. We will identify utilization, formulary, protocol management. If it's a draining wound, is the product that you're ordering good for draining wounds? Because if it's not, what are you buying? Anything? What happens if I give you a 50% discount? Still not going to treat the patient." And we walked out, and my vice president of sales, Jerry, who was now vice president of sales because we finally had a couple employees, he said to me, "We don't do that." And I looked at him and I said, "Now we do." And that's what the difference was. My business grew, and it got driven by the needs of the customer. Listen to your customer. Give them just what they want.
Now let's take it to the person who's been in the industry 5, 7, 9 years, and maybe they've been some of these executives, or they're field sales trainers, or they're reps, or they're people who maybe eventually we see a lot of people after 5 to 10 plus years maybe say, hey, maybe I want to start my own business, maybe in medical device sales, maybe not in medical device sales. What's your advice to that person?
Go for it. What's the worst thing that happens? And when I say that, I'll then say, but failure isn't an answer. So why not? Go run after your dream. But what I've learned through the years, because as I spoke to other people who were trying to figure out what they wanted to do in life, I realized not everybody wants to run a business. Some people love the fact that they can go in, work for a bigger corporation, have the comfort of knowing that there's a retirement plan, that there's health benefits. Those are all great things.
Yep.
Know who you are and what you want. And if you want to go after a dream, go after it.
I love it because it is go for it. But one thing I think sometimes people do too much is they play their lives out and, oh, if I do this, it won't work. Or if I do this, it will work this way. And as I've learned in any job, it's never going to probably go the way that you thought. And so I say that because even I have family members who've worked at a company for 20, 30 years. And like you said, some people love that, and that will be the best thing they've ever done and allow them to live life outside of the business or out of their work life. But then I've had a lot of other people as well say, hey, I'm now 30 years in my career. I wish I would have took a jump 10 years ago.
Right.
I see my friends, I see my buddies, I see people who did. Right. And so I just really appreciate being able to have so many different people on so many different walks of life. And you're the person who has made the jumps, and you have chased, and you've been able to scale teams, and you have had a lot of different people, and you've had the people we're talking about work underneath you. And so you've worked with so many different individuals. You've made so many relationships. And that's why I value what you have to say to all of the people, no matter what the ages are, because I watch you on the day-to-day connect with the 23-year-old kid or the 85-year-old individual that you worked with or that you knew. And even when we go grab a coffee, you make everyone feel so seen. And that's one thing that I'm learning from you all the time, is how seen you make everyone feel and the energy that you give, even at the young age of 69. And you're able to show what truly matters is, I think, you and the individual more than what they can do all the time.
I want to say I wasn't always like this. And I think I was insecure. I wasn't comfortable with myself at all. I didn't think I was an entrepreneur. So I wasn't thoughtful in building my business. I really did it by inertia. As needs grew, I got up and I evolved. So I want people to know that not everyone starts with a business plan and a well thought out financial analysis. Sometimes it's just getting out there and doing it and watching it evolve. I didn't know about any of those things. So I think I wasn't that sophisticated businessman. And I think that that's what people have to know. Don't overthink it. Just go out there and try to do it, and just keep doing it one step at a time.
I love that. And now, this is the big one I've been so excited to talk to you about, is you've done 3 exits. You built a company that did $68 million in revenue in 1 year. And now you get to help other individuals with all different kinds of businesses. And you see a bunch of different businesses, and you've helped other people sell their businesses, right? When you sold your business for the 3rd time and you called it good, what was your biggest takeaway from the guy who left his car in the parking lot to get stolen to now you had just made your 3rd exit with the company you started out of your garage?
That I can't means I don't want to. You can. And I think that's probably the biggest piece. It wasn't thoughtful, as I said before, but it works and it happens. And I think that's that. And also learning, selling my business was just like selling more ostomy supplies or more urologicals. I needed to give my customer what they needed and wanted. So understand the way I sold my business 3 times, to make it clear, is that I sold 50% the first time. I sold it 50%. And then I became an employee with a nice employment package that we all dream about. And then when we were looking to grow At that point, Coloplast really didn't know if they wanted to build more infrastructure and invest in more distribution centers. And I was shipping everything out of New Jersey with that suit and tie on all over the United States. So it made sense to now look at your expenses and begin to reduce your expenses. And one of the ways is to have a better footprint of distribution, reduce your freight expenses, which was probably one of our largest pieces. And so that was my need. And so I then went to Coloplast and I asked them if they would build this footprint with me, and they weren't interested in building more. And I said to them, what would happen if we took this business, which is just another widget, and we brought it to someone else who could give you what you're looking for and could give Sterling what they needed? And after talking to the board for about 18 months, they finally gave me the go-ahead to go represent them to see what we could bring back. And that's when I met with McKesson. And that was another 18 months to 2 years of dealing with people who were in the biggest business in our country. I mean, McKesson's probably, what we say, the 9th largest company in the United States.
Yep.
And I was this little guy, once again, walking in. But what I saw, and this is, again, you've got to be your own visionary. You've got to be the one driving the initiative. You've got to tell them why they need your product. I don't care whether it's that medical device or whether it's my whole business. They needed it because it was the only silo that they didn't have. They didn't have patient-specific supplies to patients at home. They had cases like they do with hospitals into the home care market, into the nursing home market, physician market, the CVSs of the world, but not there. And I walked in with over 200 contracts with insurance companies and a well-oiled machine with the need to grow and the ability to have a company that has the infrastructure that can help us do so. And that's why I thought that McKesson was an excellent match for us. And lo and behold, we ended up selling it. The best part about it, so once again, as a salesman, what do my customers need? McKesson needed this silo. I needed a footprint to continue to grow, and Coloplast wanted even more of their market share in all their different types of products. Not only ostomy, but they're very big now in urologicals, as you know. And so we were able to cut a deal where we were able to not only get them to purchase the business, and which is pretty standard, is also be able to obligate themselves to a purchasing commitment of their products so that they would drive Coloplast products into the U.S. market, not just in home care, but in every single market in home care. I wasn't brilliant. I just looked at the players and said, what are the needs and how do I fulfill them? It's very selfish. But guys and girls, men and women, whatever, figure it out. Control your destiny and go run after it and just provide people what they need. And I'll say it again, if they don't know they need it, then you need to explain to them why they do need it and then fulfill it. And that obnoxious client that you're trying to open up or a healthcare professional who doesn't want to listen to you, figure it out. Because once they do, they'll respect you and they'll rely on you, they'll lean on you, and they'll grow with you. And just do what you said you were going to do. Not too hard.
If you can give one piece of advice to people who want to be in medical device sales or in medical device sales, and they might just be the reps or wanting to be the reps, or they want to make a career where they climb and they work at one of these companies that we just talked about that you've sold to, or they want to start their own business, right? If you can go back to yourself 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and have a talk with them and just give them a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Just get up and keep running. Keep running after, I don't want to say your dream, just run after that opportunity. It's all on you. Nobody else. And don't let any of the outside chatter distract you. I can tell you about so many situations where you thought you were right there and then you got hit again. And what did I do? I just stood up and I just punched it back. And that's what you have to do. Why did I do it? Because I had to survive. Okay? We all have to survive. And we're doing great things for people. So it's not like you're trying to move a product in any way, shape, or form that isn't needed. Just don't take no for an answer.
I think that's the best place we can leave this. And I just want you to know how grateful I am for you and how much I continue to learn from you every single day. And hopefully this can be helpful to our listeners. But being able to hear your success and being able to hear your stories and where you started from to where you're at now, and then still watch how passionate you are and how much you care and how much energy and how much thought you give to everybody you work with. I just want you to know from me, thank you. And I know this is going to be helpful to listeners because you're somebody who continues to just push forward and help others get to a better spot. And that's why I really appreciate you, and that's why we align so much.
No, I appreciate those nice words. I just want everyone to know that nothing is unachievable, and you just have to have that drive. I laugh at all those books and power of positive thinking and leadership. Just go and do it and implement. Don't read about it. I don't care who you read. I don't care who you follow. It's all about what's in you. And just if you have the drive, then go run after it. And you have the power. If you want it, go show that you want it. I bet if it was something personal, you'd figure out a way to go after it and get it. Just do that in your everyday life. And life is a great challenge. Don't let it take you over. Take it head on, right? Every one of those obstacles gives you something to at least think about and figure out how you're going to get around it. And just keep winning. And there's a lot of days that you don't win. We all know it. It's a lot of sucky days. But overall, just keep doing it. And be the person that you want to show people you are. Because that's what they buy. That and the consistency of that. And knowing when people can trust you and count on you and you don't fail, you win. Very simple. Go for it. And by the way, every one of you out there, go take on the challenge. This man is giving you the keys to the kingdom. You just have to turn on the motor. And that's you. So go for it.
Hope you found this episode helpful. If you're looking to break into medical device sales and want to be in a program where people actually care about you and will help you every step of the way, click the link down below. But also just understand you're going to be learning from coaches that actually have performed in the industry. And we also work with partners inside of the industry that are looking for top talent. So again, if you're looking to break into medical device sales, click the link down below and we'll see you on the next one.